Welcome to the Paisans podcast. We're your hosts, the brothers from other mothers, Dante, Dave, and Sark. Join us as we talk about current events, our wives, kids, or whatever else life is throwing at us this week. You're with the Paisans, you're with family. You're the lounge. It's like, this you, question mark?
It wouldn't be the first time recently that something from someone's past was dug up and thrown in the media. If you saw what happened with Aaron Rodgers this past week. Did you guys see that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah,
No.
I
I
did.
didn't.
CNN ran a story that he apparently believed that the Sandy Hook shooting wasn't
Fake.
real.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that he probably said, if he even said it, 10 years ago? Like, you know why it's being brought up, though, right? I mean...
Well, he got mentioned. You saw that RFK mentioned him as a potential VP.
Yes.
Right. That's why this is coming
And
up
Jesse
right now.
Ventura.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I like Jesse Ventura a little bit better, but
I mean, truthfully, I like
Ventura's
anyone not named Aaron Rodgers for that position, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd prefer he's doing something else next year.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
throwing a football.
I mean, dear God. That's all we need. First, we're going to lose him to like a freak accident. Now we're going to lose him to like he's going to run for president.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Only the Jets, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That would
right?
only happen to the Jets.
The only reason that RFK has any shot in hell is because it would take away from the Jets. It's like, you just imagine it's like we all wake up and it's like through no one can believe what they've seen, but somehow Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been nominated president. What does this mean for the Jets, Al? Well, it's like everybody in New England and Miami voted for RFK.
Yeah.
Just to get Rodgers out of the Congress. We should be so lucky.
Imagine.
I don't think they're the least bit worried.
I saw there was a guy, I don't know his name, young guy, who directed the Tiger Woods movie. And he now directed this Dynasty.
Oh,
and
I wanted
he's
to watch
not
that.
a Patriots fan. Yeah, he says he's not. He's like completely neutral. He wanted to be neutral. And he interviewed
Heard that
everybody. Crafts, Brady, of course, Belichick. And he was just talking about how Belichick was very, very difficult to interview.
But he's comfortable being interviewed and just looking you right in the eye and going, no.
Fuck you. Yeah.
No. Like, so,
I'm worrying about,
I suppose
I'm worrying
kudos
about New
to
York.
him.
That's what he always says, shit like that.
As much as I dislike the guy, I suppose kudos to him. Like, he's just maintaining boundaries. And don't get me wrong. I think he's a cheater. And the reason he doesn't want to talk about these things is because he has no response. Because the fact of the matter is he got caught cheating red-handed. So, I suppose he's smart enough to say, why would I say anything about that? But I mean, not to make this about this, but as far as I'm concerned, he's been exposed. So I'll be curious to see if he. Wait,
He hasn't been hired. I don't think he's been hired, right?
No.
So
Because he wants the keys to whatever organization he goes to, and nobody's willing to give him that.
exactly. Well, everybody looked the past 2 years. It's like, well, you don't have the greatest quarterback of all time for 2 years, and all of a sudden you're coaching mediocre to or terrible teams. Any angry Jets fan like myself can remind you that he was about to get fired he got fired from Cleveland, and he was basically on his way to getting fired from New England until the Jets took out Drew Bledsoe, and a no-name he had sitting on the bench named Tom Brady walked in. I mean, talk about stumbling into, luck as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they were attributing, and everybody was apparently in agreement that was Belichick's call. Like when Bledsoe came back, that was Belichick's call to say, we're sticking with this guy.
In that situation, I don't even think it was that much of a I think he kind of had to, because I think what ended up happening
was winning,
right? The Jets, they lost to the Jets that game. They were 0-3, I believe.
Yeah.
And then I think they might have lost the next game, and then I think they won like 12 in a row. Something like that. Like they didn't lose. They went on an unbelievable winning streak. So it's like, well, I can't take this guy out now because we're just cruising. But then, it's like one of those things where if he messes up even a little bit, it's like, all right, well, I have Drew Bledsoe, so I'm going back to Drew Bledsoe. It's like, that's what always happens. You're losing some of that with professional coaching now. Like, I mean, it's a completely different sport, but in baseball, I was just watching Moneyball last night. I was just going to sleep, so that sort of makes sense too. But
awesome. The
general manager is basically now in baseball deciding who plays, and it's kind of becoming like that in other sports as well, where it's like you're going to play these guys because we paid X amount for them, or because they fit this system that I'm trying to build, or whatever. Especially with baseball, it's like you're only pitching pitchers X amount of innings, and then you're taking them out because they need their rest. And if a guy has a day where he gets a lot of hits and runs a lot, he's going to sit the next day.
I think that they've realized in the NFL that, in fact, I heard somebody saying it. I wish I could remember who it was, one of these commentators. It wasn't Willie Colon, but it was a player. And he basically said, this isn't going to be popular, especially with the players union. But the fact is, we're not playing enough. The key to getting fewer injuries is more playing.
More playing.
Because these guys don't really play till they get in the games. And shocker, you get a ton of hamstring and Achilles and ACL injuries in those first 3 games.
Yeah.
And I have to agree. We all know that the restrictions from the players unions are so tight. And it feels like that's what's happening in baseball too, right? I mean, Dave, I haven't been a hardcore baseball fan in over 20 years, but I do remember that pitching a full game was not an unusual thing for a pitcher.
No. Oh no, it was like a common thing.
Yeah, and you wanted
your
to
guy
do it.
was right. Yeah, the pitcher wanted to do it, and your team wanted it because they're like, well, this guy's our best, like one of our best guys, so he's just going to go out and he's going to pitch the whole game. We're going to win.
Right.
Yeah,
and
that's completely.
We've come to this day today, as you already pointed out, like counting pitches and sitting guys because of the number of pitches they've, and it's just as like. I don't know where along the line we got it in our heads that somehow this is smarter, because it doesn't seem to me like there's any evidence that it's smarter, but they continue down this path. Like
there's no evidence for it, but I think it's just like people's thought process. Like, well, if I rest more, I'm less likely to get injured. And it's like, but there's no evidence that really backs that up. In fact, I think you can pull cases of, especially in baseball, maybe look at someone like Nolan Ryan, for example. Like this guy used to throw like complete games every time he went out, pitched for like 20 plus years, like into his 40s, throwing as hard as anyone did in his time. And I bet maybe up until like 10 years ago, he could probably still go out on a mound and, with some warm up, get up to like, the mid 80s with a fastball. It's like, and he's probably in his 60s.
Yep.
If not 70s.
Yep. And it's not because he's a physical freak. I mean, no, certainly not. I mean, the guy's arguably the GOAT, right? So I'm not trying to take anything away from Nolan Ryan by any means. It's just to say it's about playing. It's about repetition.
Absolutely.
It's about practicing, and you can only really practice by doing this. Walk through practice is like, we're going to walk through the play. We're out. It's like, this is ridiculous. And anybody who's exercised knows the difference too, by the way. You work out in your basement and you do runs, in places or whatever, and I'm getting whatever shape. Then you, for whatever reason, you get outside and you find yourself actually running. You realize after 30, you're like, dude, there's no
totally different.
There's no equivalence here, man. This is like, I should be doing this if I actually need to learn to run.
It's really the analytics that I think that's what they view as the evidence, which I don't know if it really is, but it just, that's what it is. So when you look at baseball now, the big thing with starting pitchers is they go 2 times through the lineup, then the data shows that the 3rd time through the lineup, the batters should be on their stuff, like should be able to figure them out. So you don't want your pitcher to face the batter 3 times in a game now, which, again, we're talking not that long ago. They never thought about this stuff, and it quite frankly didn't matter in a lot of cases.
I think this is the desire to not be accountable. And here's how I mean this.
God.
By pointing
we
at
could talk
the
about
data,
this for a long time, I feel like. By the way. Not
we could. You could say simply, look, it's the data that basically makes the decision. Like we looked at the data. This is what the data tells us to do. It didn't work out this time. As opposed to the coach going, you know what? He was in a groove. He was pitching great. And I just felt like he was hot. I wasn't going to take him out. My gut just said, stick with him. And either that paid off this time, or I was wrong. Obviously, I was wrong. But by pointing to the data, it's just like, well, this is what the data says, and we don't argue with the data. This is like, whatever happened to gut feel, to a streak, to a guy being due. Like, oh, this is what makes the game fun.
Well, that's exactly it. That's what makes the game fun. They want more people going to the games. They want more people watching. They want shorter games. It's like, hey,
baseball,
you gotta change the formula.
Well, I was going to say, as far as I can tell, baseball is down in popularity. And part of it is, I know, is the length of the games. Like, I know now with the pitch clock.
Don, I was actually I was thinking about this. With the viewership of baseball being down, I think they've made a lot of decisions, like speeding up the game. Some of these other rule changes that they've made streaming services. They're playing games on streaming services. To me, it's trying to attract the younger audience. And I know Joey, your son, is a Mets fan now because he'll message me on Instagram and he'll actually text me asking me my opinion on things.
Into baseball.
Right. So I was curious.
That's great. That's great.
Are him and his friends really into baseball, or is it something that his generation is really getting into, or no?
I can't speak to his friends much. I can tell you that none of his friends play baseball. I take that back. One of his friends did play baseball in high school, actually.
Okay.
But most of his friends did not, and that's why he didn't get into baseball. He got into baseball in the last few years because of MLB on the Xbox. And he started playing MLB with his friends. And all of a sudden he starts paying attention and he starts understanding the rules. And Joey is a thinker. He's smart. So he's like Dave, he's like you. Like he's really into strategy of the game. And he, I always say to, our father said these things to us, Mike. I don't know if your dad said these things to us, but he always said baseball is the thinking man's game. Football is a game of inches. Even though it's played on this huge field, it always comes down to inches. Man, is that really true?
Oh, yeah.
But baseball being the thinking man's game was this thing that he always would repeat. And, you don't have to think long about it to realize how true it is. Like the circumstances are almost different every single time. I think there's a near infinite number of combinations of circumstances. So when you're pitching, the pitch count, who's on base, who the batter is, what the score is, these things all factor into what kind of pitch do I need to throw this guy in this circumstance. If you're the pitcher, and obviously you're the hitter, you got to be thinking along the same lines. If you're in the field, you got to be thinking the ball comes to me. Where do I go with the ball? If you're running, you got to think the ball goes here. When do I run? When do I stay on base? So it's really intriguing in that sense. But, and I didn't mean to go off on that, but to say, Dave, to your point, he's not really into it, but I think he got into the mentality of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And he has since said, it's like that. I got to be honest. I really do wish I had played some baseball when I was younger. I think I could have been pretty good. I was like, hey, buddy, I hear you. We got into what we got into.
Yeah.
We focused on what we focused on. We can't look back and have regrets.
Right.
Remember that for your own kid. And if you introduce it to your son, maybe he'll play. And
you know what he should try to get into
6'6",
a slow
you
pitch
could be
softball.
a pitcher.
Yeah, he should try to get into a slow pitch softball now and just play for fun.
Yes, and I can't stay on much longer, guys, unfortunately. But I do want to have a conversation about the Ballyhoo show that I went to with Joey a couple of weeks ago. Dave, you and I went and saw them almost a year ago, right? More than a year ago
at least 2. Yeah, I was going to say
was it
2 years ago.
So
yeah,
could have
been
probably
2 years.
2022.
Asbury Park, right? Is that where you went?
No, it was up Hoboken.
I think it was Hoboken.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Hoboken.
Wow.
Yeah. Kind of surprising, Mike, that they were up there, but yeah, they were in Hoboken, and it was a tiny little place. But 2 weeks ago, I went and saw them with my son in a small place, and it was just awesome time we had. Awesome. It was on a Saturday night, and I was like, I really want to go see the show, and I didn't really want to go see it alone. I knew it was relatively short notice, and I was like, my son's 18. I think he could at least get in. Would he have a good time? And I don't know what to expect. So I'm sort of pessimistic about these things. I'm thinking the location. I'm like, all right, it's going to be on the street parking, which means it's going to suck. But okay, I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to deal with that. This place is tiny and it's probably going to be bursting at the seams, and I'm going to have a hard time getting a drink or I just don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Of course, typical of me to think just assume the worst. Well,
that's been instilled in us from playing gigs with dirt floors that have exceeded capacity by 50
You're right.
people.
You're right. But the venue was fantastic. I think it was called 118 North or 181 North. I could look it up. But we'll link to it when we're done. With this episode, we can link to it. I'll find the right name of it. But it was great venue in Wayne, PA. Really well organized, big enough, and it wasn't so. And by the way, they ended up doing 2 shows. So the first show, the 9 o'clock show or whatever, sold out. So they added a second show, and that's the show that I was able to get tickets to, an earlier show.
Cool.
So we got there at 4:30, but got in. Place was really, really nice. The food, eventually we got some food, and the food was fantastic. So I want to give them major props. And the bartenders were really cool. But the best thing was the people there were just awesome. We stood there. there was this couple. So the bar is like this really long bar, and then you have the venue, like the stage is sort of at the, when you walk in, the bar is like all the way, it's like straight. It's like sort of a long, not super narrow, but a more narrow room. It's very long. And then it's almost like in another room space. They have a stage. It's only raised like 2, maybe 3 feet. But a decent sized stage with a whole light rig. And they obviously have they had a very good sound system. The sound in there was really great. So everything about the venue was fantastic. They had parking across the street, like a whole lot. I was like, this is awesome. So I was like, there's plenty of parking. That wasn't an issue. Got right in, got a great space at the bar, just sort of standing there. The super nice couple was on the opposite side of us from the stage. And, you know, I'm almost 6'3", my son's 6'6". So we're like, you know, giraffes standing there at the bar. And these people on the other side of us were like, would you guys mind swapping with us just so we could see better? And we're like, oh, of course, absolutely. They just sort of switched to the other side of us. Didn't think much of it. They were a really nice couple. And then they had this third friend with them who was she was like on crutches in a boot. So she was sort of and there were some people around who sort of weren't giving her any help at all. But we were just like move the tape, move this chair, like, oh, if you need to get in here, whatever. These people were like so grateful that they acted as if we had paid for their tickets. They bought us a round of drinks. I was like, well, they bought me, you know, I was like, thank you. And they were like, oh, well, you were so nice. And I was like, sort of felt like I just gave you common courtesy, but okay, cool.
Yeah.
And everybody else around was just super nice. The opening band was called,
was it Dale and the Z-Dubs? Is that who played with them?
Dale and the Z-Dubs. They were good.
Yeah.
I mean, they were good.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Ballyhoo came on, and they were friggin' fantastic. I mean, every song was super tight. They have a guitarist now. Actually, Dave, when we saw them, he had like kind of just joined the band. He's like officially in the band now. Guy's got a fantastic voice, does backup vocals, is an amazing guitarist. So they were the show was excellent. And, you know, my son has been to concert, like, actually, he's never really been to a concert.
I was going to ask you that. Has he been to live shows?
Not really. And so I was saying to him, the fun part about this day, Joe, is that you're going to get a chance to see, when you go see a band that's not Taylor Swift, you know, you're not in an arena and you're in a small venue and you can get real close to them. And it's pretty cool. And I mean, when we first got there, like the guitarist was out getting a drink. So he was like right next to us. And then the show comes on. And at a certain point, we got some food, and I just want to make sure I say this. Like, the food was amazing. We got wings that might have been the best wings I've ever had in my life. Like, just the way that they were cooked was perfect. Like, whoever cooked those wings knows exactly how to cook wings. They were crispy. The fat was rendered. Like, everything came right off the bone. I dropped totally clean bones. It was awesome. And then we got nachos, which were also from like homemade chips. And just excellent ingredients, really well cooked. Like, the food was great. Like, from the outside, honestly, Dave, it looked a lot like the place where we saw him in Hoboken, the name of which I can't remember.
So you'd never know.
But no, you wouldn't. I mean, it's a bar. It's like a bar restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, okay. You would never be like, oh,
Best
bands, like
PA.
talented bands I've heard of play here, and the sound is incredible. And by the way, the food's fantastic. Like, you just never. Anyway. But they came on, and then once they were playing and we got a little food, after about 10 minutes into the set, you know, I turned to Joey and I was like, let's like make our way up closer. We'll watch, you know, 20 minutes or so. And then when we think they're wrapping up, we'll make our way out. And that's exactly what we did. We were like within, you know, 10 feet of the stage. We have no trouble seeing. We sort of try to get ourselves like against the wall. I don't want to walk way up in front of the stage and stand right in front of some poor girl who's 5 foot zip, you know, like that's just obnoxious. But we were close enough to the stage. The show was awesome. And I could just see from his face, he was just like blown away. You know, he was really like, wow, this is cool. You know, and he said on the way out, then when we were leaving, he was like, I got to be honest, that was so much cooler than I expected it was going to be. And I was like, it really was cool to see them so close. And man, they were really good. And you could hear every note and like everything they were playing. And I was like, it was just a great experience, like top to bottom. It was awesome.
When you're up there and like it's really those small venues, not the big ones, is, you know, you're the audience, you feel like the audience with those, and you're a participant in the show, and you see those bands feeding off of it. Like when we had seen Ballyhoo, you know, they were making comments like, whoa, you guys are really loud tonight, you know all the lyrics. And so it's this back and forth. You're fueling them and they're fueling you.
Yep.
And as a participant, I almost liken it to watching sports, right? I mean, you're watching these guys up there doing some crazy skilled shit with their bodies and hands and fingers, and you're there jumping around. It's almost the equivalent of like watching and participating in some type of a sporting event.
And there's definitely
great. Go
a
ahead.
different feel from a small venue to a big venue, like you said, Don.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You know, when you're
That
in
was
like,
the part that I
tight-
really was stressing to him. I was like, Joe, trust me. You're going to go see one of the bands or rappers or somebody you like, and you'll go see them at some arena. And you'll go and you'll have a good time. You'll enjoy the show. But you will clearly see the difference between when you see a band like that versus a band like this that is building its following, that is got to.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody there was a fan. There were T-shirts and hats. Like everybody knew
Oh, I bet.
the band. But, you know, they're not Taylor Swift. They're not going to sell out an arena. And there's just something wonderful that you can go see a band in a band that you've heard of that like has got, I don't know, they might have millions of followers on Spotify. And I mean, I just put on a professional show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and understanding like what it takes to even be baseline now with all the music that's out there, right? Like all the competition, all the streaming. And the singer, Dave, Howie Spangler, he does a lot of, he does like podcasts on the side and everything. And a large part of it, which I love, is just visibility about that industry from the perspective of just his day to day, like the grind. You know, like, well, we went to the show and like, here's all the crap we had to deal with. And Dante and I like haven't dealt with that when we played in a band. It's like, you can relate 100%. And you see them in this incredible show. And the next day you see him in his house and he's like, here I am, right?
Yep.
This is my life when I'm not on stage. So I love that and appreciate that. They made themselves really accessible, and social media and all that has like fostered it. But I love their attitude, man. They pay it back to the fans. And then when you're there with them, you feel that band in particular, I have to say,
they just
phenomenal.
They put on a great show, and I just love their music. So I came home and they didn't have this shirt at the show, so I came home and ordered it online. So I'm being crazy about it. I also got my hat. Somebody at the show was wearing this hat, right? It's cool. Somebody in the show was wearing this hat, and I was like, I went up to the merch guy. I was like, oh, these hats. He's like, I don't have the hats, man. I was like, oh. But
that's a great hat. I got to buy that.
Yeah, I love it, right?
That was a cool
little trucker hat. So I got the hat, I got this shirt, and I got a tank top for my wife. Because I just do that sometimes. I buy her merch, and I'm like, yeah, wear this.
Right, they get like $30 for a shirt, but you want to support them.
Right.
Like when I watch him do his podcasts and then I see them play, and during the pandemic, they did like these closed shows. Remember they were doing and they were free. They would be in this soundstage, and Dave, they would like put on a show. They'd say, Thursday night on YouTube, live show. And they did like 4 of these during the pandemic, which was incredible. And afterwards they had merch, and we were so inspired to buy merch from them. It was like, the shirt's $40. I don't care. I want to support them.
Well, that's just it. You realize I'm not paying $40 for a shirt. If you look at it
see them
differently,
do well.
like, I'm just going to contribute to these guys, and so I'm happy to send them $40, and basically they give me a shirt for it. That's cool. Like that's kind of how I see it. Shout out to Ballyhoo. Shout out to Howie Spangler for an awesome show. And he posted about the show the next day on Instagram, and I posted a comment to him how much we enjoyed the show, and he responded, which was really cool. He's, to your point, like grinding. He's as far as I could tell, he's responding to everybody who posts on his Instagram.
After we saw them over the summer, because Dave, I took my boys to this reggae rock festival out here on Long Island, actually, and Ballyhoo was there. And the next day, they posted pictures because they have the selfie stick. Did they do that, D, where they do like the audience and everybody and themselves?
I think he did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he was like posting it, right, and making comments like, "Great crowd last night." And I sent him a note through it, and I just said, "I want to let you know that I'm there with my teenage kids, my teenage boys, sort of like you and your brother. My boy's a drummer, guitar player, and you should know that you guys are a humongous inspiration on them. They want to play live music because of you guys, right? I'm like, you're actually shaping a new generation, whether you realize that or not." And he responded. He's like, "Man, that means so much. Thank you."
That's awesome.
I thought the most intriguing thing to me, Don, was when we were walking up to the venue and we walked past a literal, not even a real bus. It was just a van, and we saw the guys going in and out of it, and you're like, these guys are literally touring in a van right now to play a
Mhm.
show for
Yeah.
probably no more than 200 people. And,
Mhm.
but this is what they're doing. This is what they love to do. And, they're out here really
Yep.
grinding. They probably really rely
Yep.
on the merch sales. They probably really, and, any ticket sales that they're getting, I'm sure that helps them. But they're still, that was only 2 years ago. And these guys are, they don't,
Yep.
they didn't even have a bus. They had a straight up van. And
Yep.
so
Yeah.
I can only imagine what
From
that
what I
was
can
like
tell,
for them touring.
From what I could tell in his Instagram, they still have the same one.
Jeez.
Posted a couple weeks ago saying they had a day off and they ended up having to spend it at the dealership getting the van repaired or something. So they must have. It's like,
Oh man,
I know, right? Just imagine
that's what that
it's
song
like,
"Gas Station Burrito" is about, isn't it? Like the van breaking down or something on the way to the show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's got to be a reality. You're on your way someplace, and it's not like you're going a half mile down the road. It's like, okay, we got a 6-hour drive, and 2 hours into it, you break down in the middle of nowhere. It's like, how do you deal with that? That's the song they do, Dave, that has like there's a callback within the song. And so they usually do a breakdown within every show of that song where they do the callback to the audience at that point within the song. It's a really cool kind of call and response thing. They didn't play it at the early show that we saw, and I assume it's because they're going to play it in the later show.
Yeah.
So we missed that. But when we saw them, they did that. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to remember it offhand, but they did it for us, which was awesome.
Okay.
Great. It's such a hook. Like their songs just are so hooky. Like every song is just
All
like
of them.
a couple of hooks
All
in
of
it. You're
them.
just like, God, I'm singing this all day long. It's like
That's a good one.
it just hooks you. That's why they call it the hook. All right, boys. Well, listen, I got to round out. I got to take my daughter to a dance competition.
I leave tomorrow morning, 7 a.m.
Travel well. Travel safe.
Thank
be
you.
safe, Charles.
I'll talk
Hope
to
you're
you
not
guys
flying
later.
anything made by Boeing.
Oh, God.
Sure, I am.
I know, me too. It's like
I don't think I have a choice.
can't believe I'm actually worrying about it. But
Right.
like every day in the news, it's like Jesus.
Who are the other manufacturers of planes aside from Boeing?
Airbus is like the other big
Airbus.
one. There's got to be somebody else, but yeah, it's pretty much Airbus. I
I
know.
didn't even think about that till you brought it.
I know. Sorry.